Hello and welcome to FP Live. I'm Ravi Agrawal, Foreign Policy's Editor-in-Chief. Wow. So a little over 12 hours ago, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump finally went head-to-head in the first presidential debate of the 2024 election. Biden, who's been tracking behind Trump in most polls, had one primary job: to dispel fears he was getting too old to serve another 4 years. It is only the morning after, but one thing is clear: those fears about Biden's age have gotten a lot worse. Consider some of the opinion headlines this morning. In the New York Times: is Biden too old? America got its answer. Tom Friedman, also in the Times: Joe Biden is a good man and a good president. He must bow out of the race. Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal: her words, not a headline: allowing him to go on like this feels like elder abuse. A news headline in the Washington Post: Democrats panic over Biden, doubting his future. The Economist: a horrific debate performance casts his entire candidacy into doubt. The consensus is clear. Right after the debate, even Vice President Kamala Harris admitted Biden's performance was subpar, pointing instead to his past 3 years in office. Biden wanted this election to be about promoting democracy, protecting democracy, and the world from Trump. But the debate is now about him, about Biden's age. He appeared frail, slow, and diminished. Trump, meanwhile, did pretty much as you'd expect. A CNN fact check pointed to more than 30 false assertions by the former president. But the headlines are all about Biden showing his age. There's an old Bill Clinton line everyone's citing this week: Americans prefer strong and wrong to weak and right. And I guess that's something we'll have to find out if it's true this year. I want to bring in my expert panel. We had expected to play our role and focus primarily on foreign policy topics that came up in the debate. We're going to do that. We'll have to begin with the obvious headlines first. Joining me now, Leslie Vinjamuri is the director of the U.S. and Americas program at Chatham House, and Gideon Rachman is the Financial Times' chief foreign affairs commentator. They are both in London. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, Gideon, I'll start with you. You've watched a lot of these debates, not just in the US, but all over the world. What's your reaction?
Horror. I mean, I don't want Trump to be president. And within 5 minutes, I was cringing. And that, those headlines you read out made it clear that I wasn't alone in that reaction, because obviously we've seen Biden perform in short clips. Some of us hoped that after the State of the Union speech, oh, actually, he's more vigorous. All these stories that he's no good, he's past it, maybe they're exaggerated. But here he was in an unscripted format, and it was pretty terrible. He kept losing his thread, misspeaking. He sounded hoarse. He looked vacant when the camera wasn't on him. Some of what he said made sense. Of course, he made some good points, but for the president of the United States, the bar has to be much, much higher than that. And of course, a lot of these things are about appearances. We remember the archetypal Kennedy-Nixon debate, where people say it was just the fact that Kennedy looked better, that television viewers gave it to him. And people looking at that would see a Trump who, for all his flaws, sounded confident, strong, commanding, and Biden, as I described, weak and losing his touch.
This, of course, despite the fact that a lot of what Trump said was fact-checked later on CNN, which had the debate. And of course, they pointed out a whole number of complete falsehoods. Biden also said some stuff that was fact-checked and turned out to be wrong. But really, I mean, just to put that in context, Trump's was, far many more falsehoods.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, but I mean, I agree. I mean, in the closing statements were both actually gibberish. I mean, Trump's was all over the place, but it was delivered, in a voice that sounded like somebody who could still go to work. And whereas Biden was doddery, I'm afraid.
Leslie, you wrote a piece for Chatham House this morning. You said, given Biden's faltering performance, this may turn out to be the only debate. A lot of Democratic operatives are now in panic mode. How do you expect this to play out?
Well, very difficult. I mean, just as you've said, all the people in that ecosystem of supporters for President Biden, not least because of the deep fear that so many people have of a second Trump presidency and everything that it would mean, not only for America's democracy, but for those of us sitting in the rest of the world, the real concern of what it would mean for Europe, for multilateralism, for climate change. So, I think watching this one just was very, we're all very, very unsettled. And of course, people are watching President Biden because he did seem to be faltering and to lose his momentum, to lose his memory at different points in time. But the story of Donald Trump also can't be forgotten. And the constant, digging at President Biden, talking about his son, just sort of going below the bar on so many standards that for so many decades we've come to expect. I know the bar is already, now we're getting used to that bar being lowered, but I think it still stood out. And I think that, people are looking at President Biden in light of, if he can't deliver on this kind of platform, we're left with that. And I think that brings a lot of fear, certainly to people outside of the United States, certainly here in Europe. So it's the contrast, even though we all know, if you're going to look at what governance actually means, Joe Biden has a very impressive and deep bench of domestic policy people, of foreign policy people supporting him, and nobody has confidence that that would be the case in a Trump administration. But still, you've got to be able to speak to the people, to speak to the world, especially right now.